Hi, this is Gabriel, and I'm gonna talk about the dilemma that we have with intellectual property nowadays. Um, it's it's a tool that was created with the intention of, rewarding and encouraging innovation. But nowadays, with the internet and how things are easily copied and distributed everywhere, it has opened the door for many lawsuits for ideas, and I'm going to take a deep look into how if it really is something that's still beneficial for us today. Well, things change with the birth of the internet. Um, Information has been copied and shared over and over, and whether those authors of those ideas approved or not, that doesn't hasn't stopped. The distribution of those ideas or books, music, or any other kind of medium, and that comes with the fact that the internet is decentralized and everyone has access, and much of the attempt to stop has not really um, worked anywhere. And as an example that I used was that it's the to stop such distribution has proven as futile as trying to hold water in a sieve, and it is clear to anyone that navigate through the internet. The fact is, if something's too expensive, you can usually find in anywhere, basically a quick Google search, and you can find what you're looking for. So most of the of the what what makes people copy or access illegally, as many of those authors would point out, is the fact that people in the first place, they wouldn't have the money, or um, it's not easily accessible to them, so they can get it somewhere and don't pay as much. So it's much a matter of how expensive some of those stuff is, and as even with streaming services, now that we have Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and all. Before, when it was just Netflix, you can find most of the stuff over there, so it was very beneficial to just go to one place, so you didn't have to risk going to some pirated web page and risk getting a virus. But now, with so many servers everywhere, and you can find your movie, it's not in one place, and then you have to sign up for another, and that just ended up getting too expensive. So I think that's one of the things that you know um, pushes or makes piracy flourish in the environment that we have today. Uh, but government and corporations, they've been trying over and over to stop this flow of information. And if you look in the past, it seems like the same happened when the churches, they had the monopoly of having the Bible. But with the printed press, you know, it enabled people to actually have the Bible for themselves and read and have access to the information and see if what the priest was actually saying was actually what they were what was actually in the book. And that took a lot of power out of this out of the church. So I think the same is happening with the government, with the internet allowing us to have this wide access to information, and much of the information the government or some companies or others would not like to have those in our hands. So I think the greatest gift the internet gave us is the fact that we have much more access to information, and that empowers the individual to be more knowledgeable of what is and what isn't. Even though there's of course many situations with fake news and other stuff, but I think the truth tends to prevail and and live throughout the spectrum. So even though there's a lot of like this information that you have to navigate to find the truth, eventually it's better this way to have this access to this amount of information than to trust that one governmental agency is gonna give you the actual truth out of their best interest, which which we it's proven that's not most of the cases, as they will do their best to protect themselves. Um, that doesn't mean that even their resistance doesn't come at a cost, though, because as we know, the government is very powerful, and when they choose someone to hurt, they can hurt them really bad. And the problem with intellectual property is that the government gives other individuals the power to do the same through the government. So the problem with these laws is basically that uh, they can turn against the very inventors and artists which they're meant to protect. So these laws ended up, turning and being weaponized against the individuals, that came up with ideas that might have been similar to some other people. Um, like music, much of the music, there's a lot of that happening. If and if you happen to create a music and then you're not, even though you might have never listened to somebody that wrote a similar song, you're still gonna have to, lose a lot of money, and also the stress and all the other stuff that comes with it. And that's mostly because of the way the IP law works. On the TEDx from Damien Real, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name correctly. He really shows how restrictive and bad that has come into on the music section, uh, because as he pointed out in his video, there's a limited amount of notes where you can produce music, and for you to fall into the same category as someone made a similar music is very easy, and many people find themselves getting sued over that. So it's very hard for artists or musicians to um, create music without being scared. So that restricts a lot of creativity. For some related background work, we have the U.S. copyright law, and basically, it's if you really look at it, it's a provides a monopoly over the work that the individual has created. So, um, because they have the right to exclude others to reproduce or make any changes to um, work or something that somebody created. Um, And also from the TEDx talk that I mentioned from Damien, uh, he argues that melodies are finite and can be mathematically generated. And he has created a project in an attempt to um, free a bit of this music that hasn't been copyrighted yet. So with the goal to allow others to, create music without being afraid of getting sued or some other stuff. Also, he picked um, an article from Paul, um, where he debates with does not debate, but he examines arguments from Austrian um, from libertarians, and he take a look at what they say about copyright and if they're justified in the libertarian framework of ethical values. Also, I have a video from that I use for many of the ideas. This is a famous libertarian YouTuber I like very much, and he describes the problem with intellectual property. It's in Portuguese, but I translated most of that I could for some parts of the so I could. share his ideas because I think they're also brilliant. Mm. So, thinking about the solution for intellectual property, like there's, I believe in the libertarian way. So the the way libertarian thinkers approach intellectual property is that it doesn't really exist because private property or property rights should exist only over scarce resources. So if you own land, food, or tools, you can't really have that share because if somebody were to take it from you, now you're without it. But with ideas, it's different because it's infinite. You know, it doesn't matter how many times it's copied or distributed. The original hasn't lost its value, so that means it can't be logically be considered theft because nothing was destroyed or taken from the original. It's merely a copy. Another point that really makes sense if you think about it, because many of the ones that try to fight for intellectual property, they argue that it's because it will take um, from the author the ability to generate revenue from because their idea has been copied, but that's it's coming from an idea of an expectation of having a profit when he doesn't have it yet. So how can he claim that he has lost profit of something that he doesn't even have yet? He only has the expectation to have the profit. So, and I also really like this this image with from The Simpsons. Uh, the first lesson of economics is a scarcity, and the first lesson of politics is to disregard the first lesson of economics. And I think that applies perfectly to intellectual property. Um, so the point is, if under copyright laws, if you come up with an idea and it might be very similar to someone else's, uh, and but through some turn of events, you didn't register it with the government, then you are in fact prohibited from, using your idea. And that doesn't really sounds like something right to do to anyone. This is one of the quotes that I got from Ankapsu. I think it's brilliant also. So, if you have a brilliant idea, I can also have the same brilliant idea without aggression to your property. But if you prohibit me from having the same idea as you are in fact committing aggression against my self ownership, which is my right to freedom. Um, so, in this perspective, copyright is really not a natural. It's just like a monopoly that's being enforced through state coercion, and it's really scary because, like I said, the government it can be really really powerful when dealing with hurting individuals. Um, so they, even though they were meant to, uh, broaden innovation, it's has the opposite effect. Um, so many libertarians see the intellectual property as a contradiction because it's a state granted privilege that violates the very principle of private property that the government claims to uphold. One of the arguments that I also liked from on the discussions from the article from Paul is this, where Cancelas is arguing and says that the very possibility of a conflict over a resource renders it scarce, giving rise to the need for ethical values to govern its use. Property rights are not applicable to things of infinite abundance because there cannot be conflict over such things, and concludes that property rights can apply only to scarce resources. Scarcity is the source of property rights. And I think that makes a lot of sense because um, how it's it doesn't really fit the how the idea is to protect resources where like water and some other stuff where other people you need it, but there's a finite amount of it in the world. So by you taking a share, that means someone else has been deprived of having access to the same. But with ideas, you haven't deprived anyone of anything. So, and also that comes matches with Damien's argument, because if all music can be mathematically generated, then it's the exclusive ownership of those patterns. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Um, So, and that comes back to having that the government backing such laws. It distorts the markets, discourage competition, and ultimately slow innovation, as many people are afraid of getting sued. And when we come to the analysis of uh, supporters of copyright, what they really say is on utilitarian ground. So um, you look in a way we want to reward artists, for their creation. So by having their IP protected, um, that means that we will enable them to create more works that will motivate them to do so. Um, uh, but there's evidence from other industries with weak intellectual property rights, like fashion, like purses. Like there's a lot of copying or making a similar purse from some other brand. The only distinction that you have to make is, have a different logo to identify those brands. But many of those purses or dresses, they're very similar, and there's the industry is still growing, and it hasn't been affected. So and also on open source software, it's a really a good example that creativity can flow without those enforced state monopolies. And when we look uh, at more of what they say about copyright, taking a look back and what they actually, how it's actually applied. Um, there's this really good example that I liked from Disney, Snow White. So Snow White is an old folk tale that is not protected by copyright, but Disney took this tale and created an animated film, which was a huge success. But today, they have protected this with copyright. So, to put it another way, Disney appropriated a story from the public domain and claimed exclusive ownership over it. And should that be allowed? And continue with what Encapsula said. The result is that if you make a Snow White movie today based on the original tale, which was not made by Disney, which um, even if it's not exactly like the Disney version, you probably have elements in common, not because you copy Disney, but because both of you copy from the same source. So that that really puts into perspective how intellectual property it's it's really it's not really working as it was intended. Or I think when the they created those laws, they they probably didn't foresee that it would be used this way, but this is what actually happens. So I think the libertarian way, it's what's best. Instead of taking a utilitarian stance, you take a moral, because um, if you look, the freedom to use the knowledge is a natural, and it the law it's a positive law. Somebody has to enforce it. While the fact that you need somebody enforcing it um, on top of ideas, it's really a form of coercion, and it violates the principle of non-aggression, which comes from the libertarian ethics. Well, really, Damien's argument is a little bit more moderate. He accepted the limited copyright can help with attribution in organization, but all the viewpoints conversion on the common concern that uh, excessive protection is stifling creativity and stopping ideas from being created. Is really just creating roadblocks and nothing else. So, in short, the purpose of copyright should be to reward creativity and not to punish inspiration. It's clear that ideas flourish when shared, not when monopolized, and true creativity grows from freedom, collaboration, and the open exchange of knowledge. And I hope you all agree with that. Thank you.